Oh, here we go. We going? Hello, everyone.
There we go.
There we
It
go.
was
We
just
solved technical difficulties.
it was just confused. Okay.
I'm getting a double because I'm stupid, but we're good.
Yeah, I was hearing myself through your phone.
Yeah.
All right. But hello everyone. Hello people. Hello Twitch. Hello YouTube. Hello all of the things.
Hello, hello.
It's me and me, Timothy Adon, and our wonderful Noelle. We today are going to talk about clients and the verbiage that they use to communicate with us and how we can better communicate with them.
Because clients, as much as they think they know what they're talking about, there are times they just don't know how to phrase it. Because they're used to their words, and it doesn't phrase well when it comes to actually delivering their audio that they need.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a venture.
And a lot of them, are honest and say that they have no idea how to talk about music or sound in general. And it can be helpful to know how to help guide them down the proper path towards proper communication.
Definitely. The more they know, the better. You build better rapport with that client because you always want to keep your clients. That's also like the main thing anyway. If you like end up having like this really strenuous, like they're just not understanding me conversation kind of thing, that client's gonna go down the drain and I'm going somewhere else because they just that strain was just too much.
And it helps. Friendly. It helps for everybody to feel good about the situation as well. So the more that you can be on the same playing field, the easier it will be for everybody involved. So I, in particular, have a few instances to talk about from a music perspective, and I feel like you have a lot of experience doing sound design and working with clients on that end. What's a stick out moment for you when it comes to client communication?
Like I worked a lot like client to straight to client a lot on ad work more than I did with like film work. Film work's a little bit different. Ad work, they know almost entirely what they're looking for to a T, which is fun. But with that, they are also extremely particular. So normally you'll like do a pass, right? And then you'll send them like their video with your audio included, and then they'll send you a bunch of notes. And how you interpret those is imperative. And with it being like something like an ad agency, the interpretation needs to be on that second try or that third try. There is no fourth try. It is they do not have the money to be waiting for you to like keep doing a bunch of attempts. This is a very fast type of work. So kind of the main things they're always look for is it to audio standards? So is it playing at the right levels for TV? Is it playing the right levels if it was online? Is it playing on the right levels for car radios? That's like their main focus is this to standard. Their second focus is the sound design too much? So normally in every ad you get dialogue, like a main dialogue track. You'll occasionally get some sync stuff, so that's like the recordings of like in some ads like people talking to each other, but you'll still have that voiceover being like talking about a medicine like Ozempic while people are talking in the middle, and then you'll get music. So your job is to blend those three things, make sure the sync sounds good, make sure the VO sounds good. And occasionally you get to put in sound design. It's not often in ad agencies, but when you do, they'll tell you to turn it down. And they'll be like, that's too loud. Then that's all they'll tell you. Is that effect that you had right here is too loud. So learning after time, the ear hears a 3 dB difference. Like if someone says something's too loud, you have to turn it down at least 3 dB for them to even process that you turned it down.
Yep.
So you always just start there. They're like, how loud is too loud for that person? What do they mean by that? And it's just a lot of like knowing technically the little things you could do to make it seem quieter or actually make it quieter without getting rid of it. because then they'll be like, well, now it's gone. Where'd it go?
Right.
And you're like, it's there. So then you take 3dB, now you do 2. And then you like try to take the EQs of the important sound in that effect. So get that to push through without sounding too much. So it's a lot of trying to interpret exactly what the client wants as fast as they want in my world.
Do you ever try to, in those particular conversations, it sounds like an industry where they just tell you what they want and then leave you quite alone, but is there ever a situation where you have had the opportunity to try to steer the conversation to figure out what it is that they don't like about a particular sound, more than them simply saying turn it down?
A lot of that in like backgrounds. So something that like a person won't even notice is the funniest thing. So like that bird, this doesn't sound like the area. Or like that's pretty much what they're telling you. So you're like, okay, well, what about it? We have dogs barking, we have birds going, we have some car ambience. Is there a certain sound? Is it the wind you're not liking? And it's just like trying to like tell them the different layers you have going on, and then manipulating that then to their thing. Like, oh, I just didn't like that dog bark in there. I'm like, oh, okay, that's simple. Let me just. So it's just like trying to guide them to be a little bit more specific. It's a lot easier when, like, let's say you're doing, we used to do like these Zoom calls on Session Link instead. It was called Session Link. And you got to like have your client like watch you work and listen to how you're working as it go. And that, then you'll get that like direct feedback. Oh, that right there, I didn't like that. And you're like, okay, cool. Let me just, but, over email, that's normally how most of those kind of went. And it's a lot of like email etiquette not being great all the time.
Right.
Not being clear. So that's another thing I just recommend with clients if you're ever just emailing, like you're strictly on an email basis, is making sure your email etiquette's good, because it'll promote them having more email etiquette. And that's be like, hey, I'm like, I need a little bit more.
Yeah, and something to add on since you mentioned email etiquette. For those of you watching and don't necessarily know how to properly form an email, while you don't necessarily want to write a book with an email, you do want to make sure that you are asking for all of the information in one go, because you do not want to get into a constant back and forth where you ask one question, get a response, and then ask another question, get a response. You want to get as much of your information in one go as you possibly can, so that you save both yourself and the other person time.
Like I said, some of these people, they don't have time to be sitting through those emails.
Yeah.
But one thing I would recommend, if you're doing a bunch of questions, bullet point them.
Yep.
Let them have it, read it in bullet point. Don't put in like a bunch of huge paragraphs because they're not going to read it.
Yep.
Put in bullet points. Be like, these are things I need to address with you. Please get back to me with that as soon as possible, and we can get resolved. It
needs to be clear and concise in a way that takes as little bit of their time as possible while giving you the maximum amount of information.
And then if they ever like miss a question too, instantly respond with, oh, just making sure, what about this? Always never guess. Like when you don't have to, you're building rapport anyway. They like to know that you're kind of on top of the game anyway. So it's never a bad thing to ask more questions, but the least times you have to do it, that's better.
And especially when you are first starting a project with somebody, that is the best time to get as much information as you can. Because once you've started working on something, especially on the music side, once you've started working on something, people don't necessarily want to hear from you unless you're done. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the best time to get your information is when you are starting on a project.
Definitely always have the notes out.
Yep.
Like, do not just go in some call. Like, yeah, sure, I know exactly what you want. You write down every specific, like, oh, well, you said this, so I just maybe am not interpreting that now. So, like, you have, like, your proof in a sense of, like, exactly what they asked for. Like, okay, so then I just didn't, could we re-clarify this? And then that way, now you have, like, I don't know. It's much better just to have everything laid out in details, so it's saving you in the future.
Yeah.
Always. You never want to spend 3 days on a project just to find out they hate every single aspect of it. If you didn't take the time.
And it's very important to, in those initial meetings, to ask as many clarifying questions as you feel might be necessary. It's like, well, you said you wanted this kind of sound, but do you want it to be, brighter? Do you want it to be darker? Are we going for this type of genre? It's especially, like, as we both mentioned, clients don't necessarily know how to talk about audio, music, or sound effects. And if I'm going to go ahead and go on the music side briefly. If somebody says, I want fantasy music, great, that's awesome. What fantasy music? Because there's a lot of different styles of fantasy from all over the world that it could be. So ask, a clarifying question is like, what is it about fantasy music that you like? What style of fantasy music pops into your head when you are thinking about this project? What existing media are they currently thinking about that best fits the project that they're working on?
Love examples, cutting in really fast.
Yeah.
Examples are the best. Be like, what's a film you're wanting to reference right now? Give it to me. Let me see it. Let me get all those little details, all those little nuances, get them and try to recreate them. Examples are the best way, I think, in general, to get you on that same exact page as a client. Because I don't know, I just didn't even think of that's, yeah, absolutely, examples.
Yeah, examples are great. And then when you get the examples, you can clarify it further and be, what is it about this example that you like? What is it like that stands out to you within this example? Because the more details that you can get out of I want fantasy music, the more details that you can get out of that, the better that you'll be able to get on their level within a couple tries of working. Yeah. Words.
The fantasy example is kind of funny. I was like, well, do they mean like dungeon music? Do they mean tavern music? I was just thinking of all the different ways I could go for you.
Right.
On a normal basis.
Just like, are you talking like you want harps with like lots of delay? Do you want like a standard orchestral score? Are you thinking Lord of the Rings? Are you thinking Skyrim? Like, there are so many examples of different fantasy genres. Like there are several subgenres within fantasy music in general. It doesn't even have to be orchestral. I was about to say fantasy orchestral music, but it doesn't even have to be orchestral. So.
And then you also brought up brighter and darker. Those are fun ones.
Yep.
They don't ever really get exactly what that means sometimes.
Yeah. Even audio folks sometimes have a hard time figuring that one out.
Yeah, no. But that's a term coming into this that you'll hear a lot. This is a little too dark for me. That means it's a little too depressing and sad feeling. It's a literal feeling that's brought on by what you created.
Yep.
So you have to make sure you're not doing that. I would always fall into the I'm doing this way too dark phase. Why? Because I'm a very emotional person. Everything I do comes out into my work. So if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to end up accidentally making something dark sounding.
Yep.
Because it literally is just a feeling that comes out of what you're doing. And it's the funniest thing to try to then be like, oh, oops, I kind of made this dark. And then ways that I would then try to go back and like rewatch myself to make it brighter. That's almost also all EQ sounding. So I tend to make everything in a very low range, very subtle and timid. But they're looking for something bright, happy. It's exciting. They're selling a new product. Come look at this new product. You get it. It's like a whole different shift, and all that's really bright and like 2K up, which is kind of funny that like just a wave and where it lands changes emotion so much, just because of the human psyche, and it's so cool and very in depth. And I think music does that way more.
It's so. I mean, music the music does do it a lot, but especially like if you're looking for something horrifying or dark, it's the use of a lot of silence does that for music as well. But like sound effects too, just the particular way that you carve out certain frequencies like can really help give a certain edge to the sound. Um, that's getting a little bit off track there.
Oh.
Trying to phrase another question for you. What without necessarily naming names or getting into too many details, what are some like negative uh, conversations that you've had with clients, and what, if any, are the methods that you've used to kind of like redirect some of those conversations, or even just deflect them if it then ended up becoming too much?
A lot of them stem from other people who have done your work, in a sense. I feel like my worst problem I've ever had was a director who also stemmed from an audio world, who came from audio. It's an ego thing.
Yep.
They were used to how they do things, and the way I did it wasn't how they expected it. And it was also a lot of communication errors and emails, like us not understanding each other. It was me getting frustrated because I'd ask a question and then I wouldn't get an answer. He'd go to someone higher than me to get the answer. That comes with also being a woman in audio. Once they find that out, it exists.
It's like all of a sudden I know more than you.
It's an all of a sudden I know more than you. It does not happen often, thankfully, but it does. And it doesn't have to be like the fact that it was a man to woman. It was the fact that that guy pre-existed in this expertise, and he didn't have the time to do the project on his own. So then he entrusted someone else, and it wasn't exactly what he wanted. And I was really proud of the thing, so that made it even more harsh because, like, when you get proud of your work, you're kind of like, "But it's great," and they're like, and so you have to like then to fix it, re-humble yourself, even though you feel like you're right. Let them think, "Oh no, you're absolutely right. How can I fix this for you? What else can I do to realign this to your goals?" Saving client face is always important. So it's a lot about being like, okay, absolutely, my mistake. What's next? And then so then you just restart the conversation again. Try to start on a better foot. Like, hey, I noticed that like this wasn't handled well, or hey, let me just give this one more go. What exactly can I do? Like, how did we not get on that right communication? And it's a lot of just let's try to and restart.
Yeah, sometimes it can be important to just take a step back, for all parties to take a step back and be like, okay, let's come back at this fresh, and pretend like we're doing this for the first time again, and just like see if hit the off switch and turn it back on again, and see if that
computer off.
yeah.
First restart. And in music, I feel like that'd be way more aggressive for like you, in a sense, like you said, you have to pretty much finish before you even get like a full rundown. How does it kind of go for you when you're working with clients and you're waiting so long? Like, you're already so invested to then try to fix from ground zero.
It's hard because, like, as we mentioned, you need to have, like, once you've had your initial meeting with the client and they say, okay, it seems like we're on the same page, let's go ahead and get going. And you really want to try to have an example to them, like within the first, like the early time frame for whatever the project is. You want to try to have a first rendition of something going, just to make sure that what you're thinking is in line with their thinking. And sometimes that early draft will be, at least according to the client, will be what they're looking for. But then as you start developing it further, You don't necessarily want to be, and the clients especially don't necessarily want to be bothered every week. It's like, here's another update and here's another update. It's like they trust you to be on top of it. And a lot of this just kind of takes practice and working with different clients and what it is that people are looking for. And this, of course, is where asking all those clarifying questions becomes very important. Because once you've submitted your first draft and the client gives you the go-ahead, you need to then be an independent worker. You need to be able to work on this project more or less until it's finished without having any sort of critique on your work. This, of course, is different when you're working in-house. If you're a this is more the case when you're a freelancer. If you're working in-house, you're gonna have a supervisor or something who's constantly monitoring your work. But if you're working freelance, you're expected to be your own supervisor and have everything done. And thankfully, I haven't had a project where I've gotten to the end of it and the music wasn't what the client was looking for. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, can you please, remove this instrument or change the instrument or remove this lick that I really didn't like. Sometimes that'll happen later on after I've submitted the quote unquote final draft. But thankfully, it hasn't happened yet that the entire thing was off. Most of the time when the entire thing is off, that's when I send the first draft. And that's the point of the first draft, is to make sure that you're on target.
Oh yeah, for sure. I did work in-house. I'm starting to work freelance now, but in-house it was nice because there are times where I just can't interpret what someone's saying in an email that well. Yep. I take everything harsher than it is meant to be said, or I literally just can't interpret things sometimes. So it was always nice to always have someone to go to, like, hey, so I'm reading this. They're saying to do this. What are they meaning? So it was nice always being surrounded by a bunch of audio folks that are used to that kind of scenario. So if you're ever really struggling and you have a friend who's in the industry, don't hesitate to be like, hey, what would you think this could mean? Or right. How would you interpret this? Everyone audio has been there. And then everyone's always, for the most part, really willing to always help out. No one's there to kick you down that much.
Yeah, and don't take silence or curt responses as a negative sign. Way too often, and it is frustrating, way too often you'll send in, say, your final draft, and it's like, here's the final draft, and then the response that you'll get back in text is K. It's like, okay, what did you think?
Are we done?
And then you'll just get nothing. And it's like, and I've learned that it's just better to assume that if they didn't tell you that there was something wrong, then there wasn't anything wrong and they liked it. A lot of times people are just too busy and, to them, it's just checking something off a list.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of those in the ad world. Those were fun. Just like, oh, you can send me the link now. I was like, oh, okay, you liked it. Okay, cool. Here you go. It's the final, I guess. I'm glad you liked it. What did you like about it? I would love to know that. But
yeah,
it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, sometimes it would be nice to have even like positive critiques. Is like, I'd love to know why you liked this or why you didn't like it, but a lot of the time people don't have the time.
They don't. One sentence responses are normal.
Yep.
They hurt, but they're there.
They do. They hurt, and they're very anxiety-inducing.
Oh my god! The amount of times I just assumed someone hated me just because they're giving me nothing, and they're like, oh, "Okay, cool." And then they come back a week later with another project. Like, oh, okay, cool. They liked it enough.
And then all of a sudden you get your check for the project. It's like, oh, well, there. I guess, yeah, okay. That's it. That's done.
That's always fun. I think you'll never run out of a different type of person.
Yep.
No one person is going to communicate the exact same way as another person. So it's very funny. The random encounters you run through, like those one sentencers, and you're like, cool. I'm glad this was short and sweet, and we'll move on.
What are things that you've had clients say that you've had to try to translate into audio speak for yourself?
Uh, a lot of them deals with like more like trying to translate what they said into like a plugin. So like this isn't sounding blank enough, or it's like it's not crunchy enough, and you're like, okay, crunchy. What's crunchy? Crunchy most likely is distortion.
Yep.
They want it distorted. They want it to be the most prominent thing in the mix. And what's funny is I didn't realize how much people just kind of just put a layer of distortion on it just to do it. I was never that type of person, but like almost all VO in the commercials has a fucking has a layer of just like just a distortion just to get it higher than all the like sound effects that are in it. I didn't realize like how much is just used daily.
I'm actually kind of guilty of doing that too.
I never did that until I started working in house and doing ad stuff. I was like, "You're what?" I'm like, "No, you don't understand." And then they'll do it and they'll show me before and after. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." No,
it just makes it better. It's like salt.
Makes it louder. And that's another thing. Louder is better to people who aren't in audio most of the time. Like that's kind of just their brain, the thing the brain that works. It's like, oh, that bird you didn't think was important. Now, I don't know where they loved it and they want to hear it everywhere as loud as it can be. They want it loud. It's always really fun. So I think that's a big one.
I feel like this might be a fun like follow-up stream to this one is now that we've talked about what it is that clients say, here's how to do the things that the clients say. It's like how to make something stick out. Something that that I've constantly been asked for in some music is, hey, can you make that instrument louder? It's like, that instrument is as loud as it can be without peaking. So, you know, it's how are we going to solve that problem to make that instrument be perceived as louder? Like, obviously, we can lower the levels of everything else, but that in and of itself could also cause problems. So that's a potential follow-up video to this one, I think.
That's a good one. And that's also a good point really fast. There are times where the audio they sent you is as good as it gets sometimes. That I've had multiple clients be like, this is more film-based now. Well, they'll send you all the audio files that are on set. And like, this just isn't sounding good. I'm like, this is how it was recorded. This was on set. This was a problem that could not be avoided, or your person just could not get it right. This is the take.
Yep.
This is your best take. I went through all of them. It's clean. I can make it less clean and make everything else around it less clean. So then it kind of like, so that goes into like the next thing of how you can make it better. But there are times where you just have to explain to the client, this is that. Here are your options. Yeah. And then it kind of hurts. It's like such an awful conversation to have with a film client. But
it's like a breakup.
These are you'll send them to, and I'll send them versions. I'm like, here's this chunk like this, here's this chunk like this, here's this chunk like this. Any of these fitting slightly better for you, because I agree it's just not great.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. We audio folks can sometimes be perceived as magicians, and we do a lot of really cool stuff to make sound great. But if you don't get a good recording, there's just very little that we can actually do with that.
You can work, but we cannot actually solve crap. It's you can polish crap, but it's still crap.
Yep.
And that's what it is. It's why it's so imperative to be good on set. Like, those production sound people need to be on their stuff, make sure the lobs are right, make sure nothing's creaking. Can we block off traffic? Oh my god. The amount of indie films that cannot block off traffic is appalling. But and then you just do your best to then work with it. But that's always you have to be able to have that conversation with the client in a way. It's like, I'm going to do what I can. This is what I can do. Does this work for you? If not, EDR becomes a friend.
Yep.
In that world. You bring in the actors and you hope they can lip sync really well or get that same emotion they had while they were there. and it almost never is exactly as good as it was. It could have been if it was recorded well, but at least it's clean.
But at least
and
you
it
have
makes sense.
something, yeah.
It's not. I've had so many of those. So many generators. Cicadas.
They will
never
absolutely
realized-
demolish a recording. Their mere
You don't realize-
existence.
How bad cicadas are or how loud they are until you're trying to get rid of them in an audio recording. Why? Because they are in the same exact frequency as all the important sibilants in a person's voice.
Yep.
You're cutting out a cicada, you're cutting out any time that they said a word. It's I hate cicadas, hate crickets.
That's really funny.
Birds are easy. I love when you get a bird in a recording. It looks like a little 7 when you look at the audio spectrogram. Really easy to find and get out. Cicadas, it looks like a block. And you're like, yep, not doing anything here. I can add cicadas to the background so it doesn't sound like it's cutting out. And that's it. That's all you got. I hate cicadas. Hate them. Every
That's really
summer
funny.
recorded movie.
Oh.
Hello, Pilgrim.
Hello. What is this? We are Joystick Jams, and we are audio professionals that talk about our profession. We talk about processes and tips and tricks, and at some point we'll get into doing actual audio tutorials, but we haven't gotten into that point yet. How are you doing?
We work on game audio, we work on film audio, and commercial audio.
Yeah.
And we do all the works. Tim is a musician specialist, composer. And I'm a sound design and post-house kind of specialist.
And our other host is Adam, and he is not on for this week, but should be on for the next stream that we do.
I got kind of distracted.
But yeah, Pilgrim, if you end up having any questions, feel free to ask. What were we talking about? I actually want to circle back to something that you said.
Yes.
You mentioned giving multiple versions of files to clients, and that's actually something else that's very important, is that if you are not 100% sure about something, especially if you are a fair way into if you're just beginning or already fair way into a project that you're working on, it's very helpful to go ahead and give your clients options, because then it is not only helpful for them to know that they had a hand in constructing what it is that you're making, but it also then you have a record of, oh, they picked this version of this audio file where I did this, so I should do more of that. Like, that is what they're looking for. Yeah.
Sound design is a lot of fun doing versions because that's pretty much all you're doing. So like they'll give you like an animation to work with, and then you're giving them 5 versions of it, and then they'll pick which one, and they're like, actually, I want this one with a tinge of this one. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I know exactly what you're talking about. And then, so it's always fun. In like films, you can't really do that often. The most I could do is like give them dialogue versions and let them see progress through minutes. So you're like, oh, here's the first like 5 minutes of your film. Tell me what you think. Tell me what I can change. And going that way.
Yep.
For that same reason of not getting fully involved in it being wrong. Letting them be in every step of the process of that film.
Yeah.
But no, having the versions of sound designs is, I think, the funnest part of it all, because you're like, you can go. My trick to doing versions is doing one that you think is perfect, one you think is completely wrong, and then the middle one that blends the two of those together, and then you'll see kind of exactly what they're going for. Because then it kind of leads into, and then if it's the thing you totally didn't think that they'd like, and you're like, oh, okay, I totally didn't understand exactly the point of this process, or like exactly what they wanted. So it kind of just gives you a really good starting point, if not the end point, almost instantaneously of exactly what they wanted.
Absolutely. Yeah, usually at the start of a music project for me, I come up with like a few different licks using a few different types of instruments, and I'll layer in some chords in the background and be like, okay, Are you looking for this one? Are you looking for this one? Are you, or here's the wild card. Are you looking for that one for some reason?
I love the wild card one. I love when they pick the wild card one.
It's like, oh, we're going crazy today. Got it.
I love it. It makes it so much more fun. You're like, oh, I got to get this to work now. Fun. It really is just more of the joyful thing. You're like, this isn't the type of person I thought you were, but I'm excited. Here we go.
I was working on a project recently, working on a Halloween game, and I wrote some music. I made it, very lots of sine waves when you're making like a typical like cartoony Halloween game. And I wrote it, and the person got back to me and was like, that sounds a little bit too cool. Can you make it, more goofy?
That's so cute.
and so I wound up looking up the theme song for Goosebumps, and using that as my basis, because that's like extremely like corny, spooky music.
That's like another fun one too, of like, can you make it less serious?
Yeah.
Like, yes. I can make this as unserious as you want.
Can you make this less good? Because we don't need it to be that good, or don't want it to be even.
Because like times it just doesn't fit. Like, if you're working with like a cutesy game, make it cutesy. Don't make it perfect.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be. Make it cute.
Absolutely.
That's always fun.
Simplification is everything. That'll probably be another future video. I should be writing these down.
With music, it just seems so much more complicated to me, in that like in my world, versions would have just been me switching up the instruments, but you have to like switch up like your melody, or like it just seems way more convoluted.
It can be. So it ultimately depends on how the client asked for what they are looking for, because hopefully, again, you're getting everything nailed down in that first meeting. For me, it's a lot of doodling. I will sit down at the keyboard, I will pick an instrument, and I will just start tapping at the keys until something kind of pops out that it's like, okay, we're going to save that, and then picking a different instrument, tapping at the keys some more. It's like, okay, yeah. Oh, this instrument doesn't necessarily sound good with that melody, so let's try it with, something over here, and just like getting a few renditions in until finally I decide on some chords, some background instruments, and then usually I don't get any further than 8 measures in before I send it to the client, and I'll try to do at least 2 versions. Doing more than that can be a little time consuming. And at that point, after I've done 3 or 4 versions, I've pretty much run out of ideas.
It also could be overwhelming for clients to receive like 7 versions of something right off the get-go. Yeah. Do not do that. They will then do what I said before. Like, I need a tinge of version 2 with version 7 with version 3 as the main, and it just makes it way more confusing for the client. Make the versions 3 at max 3 in the beginning. Yeah. I feel like is good, and make them very different from each other. The more different they are, the better.
Yeah.
And
Send
in
the client
you could use, yeah, and in a sense, you could do the whole cartoony thing. Make one really serious. Make one really joking, and then make one, I don't know, but like that would be key. Just doing one solid one. This could be fun. Like, want to try this? And then one just kind of in the middle. But do not send 7 versions, because the client will just be like, I guess these are all good. You'll never reach any kind of consensus.
And 3 is kind of the sweet number, because especially in music, you could, as you said, you can make them all very different. And if you put vastly different elements in them, then the client can pick individual elements from each one. It's like, oh, I really liked the guitar from version 1, can you please layer the orchestra, layer it with the orchestra in version 3, and to hell with version 2, or whatever. Like, it's all about making the client comfortable talking about your work and getting them hip to your lingo.
It's just funny. I just keep thinking this one thing I did is like, oh, I really liked how the cloth sounded on this version of this one. Could you add that cloth sound to this one? Because it sounds heavier and cooler. But can you also make the boots sound like this? And you're like, oh, okay. I love that. That's my favorite part. When you get down to the nitty gritty of like what they're wanting, you kind of got them in a really good spot. And the more they're engaged, the better the outcome's going to be.
Yeah. And if you ever start working with a client repeatedly, you'll start getting to a point where they understand, like, you can start understanding how you talk to each other, and then that ends up becoming like the sweet spot, because then you can work with each other very closely, and you'll each know, you can work in a very integrated fashion, is pretty much what I'm trying to say.
Also, they'll just be like, oh, I trust you got this. And then you show them and you're like, yep, you get it. And then there was no revision. There wasn't nothing. They knew exactly what you were going to deliver, and then you delivered it. That's always great. You knew you kind of hit it with them. Another part. I haven't had many like freelance clients yet, so we're getting there. But working, emailing every day and seeing like your good stuff, your bad stuff, it just takes a lot of learning. And you'll get there over time. And the more rapport you get, the better you get. You kind of learn. But to always start off email etiquette, I'm going to go back to that. Always get your emails clear, concise. Do not add a bunch of, hey, how's the weather? No one cares. They don't want to read it.
Yeah, and
it's nice to do on the side, not in the project email.
Important email etiquette thing is always put your intent of the email first, and then anything secondary like small talk or what have you goes at the end. That way it can be skipped, because honestly your small talk can be skipped.
One sentence in the beginning, hey, checking in, how you doing? By the way, this.
Yeah.
This needs to get addressed right now.
Yep. And don't all caps. Do not do caps lock. Do not caps lock your messages. Please, for the love of all that is holy, do not caps lock your messages.
I feel like you had like a story there.
My current job, one of the people that I currently work with, forgets to uncaps lock and doesn't look. She actually looks at her hands while she's typing, so she doesn't actually see what she's typing. And then by the time she's typed out her entire email, it's all in caps lock. And I don't like, even though she doesn't understand it because she's not an internet person, I don't like being yelled at. Quote unquote yelled at.
They don't know any better. Oh,
yep.
My dad's like that. He works as a manager and can't write emails. So he will have someone write his emails for him. It's that kind of.
Ugh, that's a shame.
It's fun. It's a trip. But like that kind of mindset works in audio. It's that they don't have the audio mindset.
Yeah.
It kind of all goes back to that. Someone could be internet savvy, tech savvy, video savvy, but when it comes to audio, there's most likely a disconnect.
And while it can be frustrating, it is important to guide people through that. And at least, I don't know, in my eyes, it's more forgiving that people don't know about audio, because that's an entire skill set. I feel like if you're a manager, you should know how to email. But with that being said, it does happen. And it is our job to help guide people through that, regardless of whether or not you want to. It is our job to guide people through that. And it'll make everything better for everybody once you've done it. Important
be
note.
Be patient.
Yeah, be patient and practice. And now you might be wondering, how does one practice talking to clients when you don't necessarily have clients? Game jams or collaborative projects.
Game jams are great. They're a lot of fun.
Awesome.
They're perfect for everything and everyone.
Yeah.
You learn how to communicate with people. You learn the kind of people you don't want to communicate with, why you didn't want to communicate with them. Once again, I feel like the biggest hurdle is ego, especially in a game jam situation. You'll see that a lot of the time. You'll see that one person be like, "This is my idea. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it," and they don't understand how to like look or step back. So even if it's you melding to that person in a way that gets the job done, that's kind of what you have to do in a lot of situations in the future too. So no matter what, it's good training.
Yeah.
You'll get the best and the worst in the game jam. Recommend them.
Absolutely. And I know we've talked about this maybe even in multiple streams in the past. Like game jams give you so many different skills, social skills, professional skills, on the job skills. It's just, they're so good. It'll be amazing practice.
And then if you're not super confident going into a game jam, join in with someone who's done it before. Like if you're in the game industry or whatever, or you like gaming, or you just got out of college, there is someone else who's in that same boat that wants to do it and like has this skill set, but not exactly that skill set. Find that person that has that one. Go in together. Now you got a teammate and you're ready to go. Don't be scared. Everyone's in that same boat. There are people who are going in there with little to no experience at all, and that's fine. Everyone's got to be willing to teach each other something, and they'll all learn something in the end. It's a good thing. Do it. Don't be scared to do it.
Yeah, do it. You have my permission and my encouragement. I believe in you.
They're fun. Like I said, I think the funnest part is then learning how to then work with someone in a very short amount of time.
And you make a lot of friends too.
Oh yeah.
I've made a lot of friends going to game jams.
And these potential friends could be potential clients once they realize, oh my god, look, they're amazing at what they do, and they're eventually going to hit it off. Now they have the right connection.
That has literally happened to me.
It happens all the time. Do it. It's fun. It really is just like a cute, fun way to show off what you can do, learning what other people do, and trying to integrate all of it. It shows you every step of it. Cannot nix how important they are starting off.
What are some other potential good ways to learn how to talk with clients?
Other than doing it, it's kind of
meetups. Like
that's a good one.
Yeah, just going to in-person meetups, or even virtual meetups, but in-person meetups especially. It's not quite the same. Nobody's actively hiring you at a meetup, but there's still a lot of communication skills that can be learned in such a like low stakes professional environment.
Oh yeah, and then the game world has a bunch of those. No matter any kind of place you're, I mean, in my hometown they wouldn't have existed, but there's a lot online in those cases to like just join in a bunch of chats with people that have done this. But game audio hangouts and game hangouts are a great way to just talk to people, and it's like get some wording, get some verbiage.
Yep.
Get it down, learn it firsthand. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I understand, like I said, I grew up in a boony town. We had corn and corn accessories.
Corn accessories.
Our gas had the corn option. Go online. It exists online, and you'll find plenty of people online to talk to. And that's where I would also just go straight to game jamming. Meet those people. Be in those forums. They're all on Discord.
Involved. It's scary.
You got it.
It's scary, but definitely do it. Highly recommend.
Just say what you're confident in, and someone will find you. Someone will utilize you if they feel desperate. It's a very desperate type of thing, and you all kind of flourish in that environment. And at least that's how I've always learned was crunch. I love crunch, and in the real world, that is the main thing in the game industry is everyone's crunched.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the case. No, that's bad. Bad companies.
Bad companies. Unless it's for a game jam, in which case it's fun.
Yeah, you signed up for the crunch. It is a crunch.
Crunch is fun when it's consensual.
Yeah, exactly. AAA studios should not be crunching at this point in time, but they are.
Yep.
It's crazy, the game industry right now.
It's absolutely nutty. That is a whole other topic.
That'd be a fun one for soon.
Yep, yeah. I think we should have a stream with all three of us again. I think that would be a good time to talk about just a bunch of random things. But that is neither here nor there. We have just a few minutes left. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or ask or say?
Reiterate everything. It takes patience first and foremost to gain rapport with your client, and that is the most important thing, is to then have that client be a client next time. So if you didn't get on the right foot, be willing to be like, oh, my bad, be the bigger person in a nicer way. And then just, if you don't understand something, ask. It's not going to hurt that bad to ask. If you don't want to ask your client, ask a friend that knows the industry. Like, what could they be meaning when they say this? And they'll help you try to walk through it. But if they don't get it either, don't hesitate to just ask your client again. Hey, is this kind of what you mean? So like they see that you're attempting to translate what they wanted. But yeah, first and foremost, patience and building that relationship.
Yeah, communication is very important. Do not be afraid to ask clarifying questions. Yes, you're the professional, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be curious and want to have all of the information. Yeah.
I want to talk about their project. Give me some more details. What are you thinking? They'll love to talk. It's their baby.
You don't even necessarily have to ask about audio related stuff. Just ask about their project in general. Being more in tune with what it is that their project is and what they're doing with it will help make you a better professional in the end.
You better good starting base. Like, oh, this is their goal final project. Here we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Be willing to communicate and learning what worked and what didn't, and practicing.
And go to game jams.
Go to game jams.
All right. Well, that's it for our hour. Our next stream will be in 2 weeks, and it will be Noelle and Adam hosting. And yeah, so we will talk to you next time. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, remarks, send them to joystickjams@gmail.com. We also have a YouTube channel of the same name, and we have a TikTok. I don't know if we posted anything on it yet. But yeah, get in touch with us at any of those platforms, and we will talk to you later.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Bye.